Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings and welcome to all our esteemed guests and respective viewers and listeners. Honestly, this occasion is um, it is a day for us to not just acknowledge and commemorate the original custodians of Canada, but to me, this should be an opportunity to let them voice their narrative in their own words, from their own perspective. Um, and in relation to that, to have a systemic effort to give them their voice, their narrative in all um, contexts where it is required. We heard one of the guests, Minister Chagras, talking about the difference between what we studied in school growing up and what we heard when we started receiving what should be called the original and the correct narrative from the perspective of from the descendants of those people that are meant that we learn about, the tribes and the nations that we read about when studying Canadiana. I think one of the greatest things that we can give from our side, being outsiders, first is the opportunity for our Indigenous friends, brothers and sisters, to voice their narrative, their history, from their perspective, and this should be done in an official way. Right now, it's happening in the form of events like this, in various on various platforms and through various programs. But I think the official narrative that is taught in every single school across Canada should be the narrative that comes from the perspective of the Indigenous people. That is, ethically speaking, morally speaking, the only valid narrative. People who have looked after this land for since time immemorial, and then through various methods which were pretty much the hallmark or the trademark of Western colonialism, they were put into that situation, manipulated in various ways, control of the land, control of the resources, which hold a sacred sort of symbolism in their belief system, and from people who looked after the land and everything in it with such care, and with such love, to have all of that stripped away, and still not being able to hear things openly from their side, or let's say officially from their side. I think this is one of the greatest things that was taken away. That someone else wrote their story for them in words and with facts, or perspectives that were convenient for the outsiders to place and present. And when we're talking about all of these facts and figures that have been presented, whether it's systemic racism, bias, being marginalized, being subject to to greater risks in all aspects of life than other communities. It's an injustice upon an injustice, and then you take their voice away, and what they're saying is only transmitted to a very, very small circle of people who are actually trying to understand them better, trying to help them out, but really it's still not mainstream. It needs to become mainstream. It needs to become the curriculum. I am by and large, an educator. And so I design curriculum and syllabi, and I write textbooks, and I implement educational systems. So this is something that I hold very dearly to my heart, that ultimately, what is the narrative that is being delivered through that system, and what will be the outcomes? You've all heard about social engineering of various types. This is one major form of it, the mainstream education. I cannot emphasize this enough. And those books need to be written by the Indigenous people. That whole history of Canada, the colonization aspect of it, what the treaties really looked like, what was the impression given when those treaties were made, what preceded them, and what were the emotions at that time? What were the Indigenous people feeling at that time? What was the emotional climate? All of this needs to come out, and it cannot come out from correctly from the outsider's view. It just can't. So one of the greatest things we can take away from a nation is their voice, their narrative, their story, and then take it over and then pretend like that's the truth. And it sounds an awful lot like what's happening with Islam and Muslims around the world. So we feel this. Our voice was taken away. Our story was taken away, and it was taken over by people who just wanted greater viewership, greater readership, and they just wanted, it was more about the storyline than about the story, and till this day we struggle to find our voice and make our voice heard amidst criticisms that we don't hear the Muslims speaking. It's because other people are trying to speak on our behalf, and their voice is being broadcasted around the world. The other thing is that, in taking steps towards reconciliation, it is important that we put the Indigenous people at the center of all discussions. Their needs, their difficulties and problems. We can talk about reconciliation. We can have an official acknowledgement for the traditional and original custodians of our land. We can mention their tribes by name, and this is important. However, if we do not take significant and measurable steps towards eliminating the problems that the outsiders or the settlers have created for them, then we have not done anything close to justice. And it will not be a true and genuine step towards reconciliation. You have to look after the problems first. We're hearing facts and figures all the time. Many have been presented right here in terms of crime, in terms of medical health. I don't think we've talked about emotional health just yet, but if you look at the figures, the statistics of suicides, especially of teenagers, especially of young people, and look at it in perspective, just like the other statistics were laid out, you'll find that the numbers are shocking. It's unfair. It's unfair. And if we do not, as I said, if we do not take significant and measurable steps to reverse the damage that has been caused, then our silence or our inactivity in this makes us, like silent partners, like people who are condoning it, just because we're not doing anything to change it. In one hadith, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Help your brother, whether he be the oppressor or he is oppressed." So his companions asked, "Yes, we will definitely help him if he is being oppressed. But how do we help him when he's the oppressor? Because you must stop him from his oppression. That is his help." So taking steps to remove oppression and injustice as it stands right now, and creating systems that put people in a certain position is also a part of injustice. and oppression. So these statistics that we are reading about and hearing about need to come down. And that's one of the, that would be one of the metrics that I would say gives us a measure of what, what efforts are actually being made. The statistics are significant. They need to come down in all of the areas. And let's put them at the forefront. Let's put their needs. First of all, the difficulties that they're going through. Let's put those at the forefront, and then let's bring them to the forefront as, as a respected and honorable and, and very, very valuable part of our society, without which we cannot really be complete. So these are just a couple of points. And look, the trend for Western colonialism is, it's pretty consistent across all of the countries that were colonized. And it brings to mind, just in closing, I'll mention a statement in the Quran. There's a very famous story about Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. It's mentioned in all the biblical texts, in the Hebrew Bible, and in the Bible, and even in texts outside the Bible. And it's mentioned a lot of detail in the Quran. And when when the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, was consulting her court about what, this is the message that has come from Solomon, what should we do? She said, look, there's one thing that I know. Innal muluka, when kings or people with the intention of gaining power and rule, whenever they go to a land, afsaduha, they do two things. Afsaduha wa ja'alu a'izzata ahliha adillah. They always cause damage to that land. They cause significant disruption to that land. They take the honorable people, the honorable residents and dwellers of that land, people who were held in high esteem by that nation, and they lower them and they disgrace them. They take away their esteem, their prestige, their respect, and they put them into a position where they become impoverished, they become weak, and they lose everything that they had. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is what a reversal is required for, as a significant step towards reconciliation. So thank you for so much for your time. Actually, I don't feel like I deserve to speak at this forum. This is someone else's forum. It should be someone else's voice, someone else's narrative and their story. It's all about them. We are just here to voice our concerns, our solidarity, and our support. And we are ready to do, from our platform, Islam Unravelled, we are ready to do whatever it takes to play a role in this. Thank you so much.